How are you guys doing? Today is Saturday, April 2nd, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to preview the Final Four round for the 2022 Men's March Madness Tournament, as we are now down to the last 3 games of the college basketball season. It's really been a long way for all 4 of these teams, as they had to make it through 2 weekends where they each had to win 4 different games total to make it all the way here. For this episode, in addition to previewing these matches, I'm also going to review these teams' paths and how they made it all the way to the Final Four. And of course, as we navigate through this tournament round by round, of course, it's going to get closer and closer to the end. After both of these games are played, I'm going to preview the national championship game that will be played on Monday. But for right now, I'm just going to look at all 4 of the teams that made it, because this is quite possibly one of the most historic Final Fours of all time, as we've never even seen Duke UNC ever even play in a tournament game. And on the other side of this matchup, of course, Villanova and Kansas is of course going to be a highly anticipated matchup that many people are going to be looking forward to. So I digress and look at the 4 teams that are going to be playing today. The first matchup of these 2 is going to feature the 1 seed Kansas Jayhawks from the Midwest bracket. They're going to face off against the 2 seed Villanova Wildcats. Looking first at how both of these teams got here. Looking first at Kansas. Kansas was the only number 1 seed to even make it to the Elite 8 round, I believe. So, of course, Kansas would be the only team from the Elite 8, the only number 1 seed to make it to the Final Four. The regular season ended once they beat Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship game. Once they made it into the tournament, they would face off against 16 seed Texas Southern, as Texas Southern had to beat Texas A&M Corpus Christi by 9 in order to make it into this tournament. In this first matchup, Kansas would end up beating Texas Southern by 27 points after they outscored Texas Southern by 28 essentially in the first half. In this first game, they would go on to be led in scoring by their guard off the bench, Remy Martin. Their senior from Burbank, California, would go on to finish with 15 points on the day, as he added a couple of steals in 21 minutes. After that first matchup, they will go on to play their second matchup. Both of their first matchups of the tournament were played in Fort Worth. In the second round, they would go on to beat 9 seed Creighton after Creighton won their first matchup against San Diego State. Kansas would beat 9 seed Creighton by 7 after they outscored Creighton by 6 in the second half. In this matchup by itself, Kansas would be led in scoring by Remy Martin again, as he finished with 20 points and 7 rebounds off the bench. Their starting forward, Jalen Wilson, their sophomore out of Denton, Texas, will go on to finish with a double-double in this game, as he had 14 points and 14 boards. Following this first weekend, Kansas would make it all the way through to the Sweet 16, as the Sweet 16 for them would be in Chicago. They would face off first against 4 seed Providence, the highest seed that they would face off against in their bracket. They would beat Providence by 5 after outscoring Providence by 9 in the first half. Kansas was led in scoring by Remy Martin off the bench again, as Remy Martin had 23 points and 7 rebounds. Also, Jalen Wilson out of Texas, their starter, would finish with 16 points and 11 rebounds to help get Kansas all the way to the Elite 8. Once they made it to the Elite 8 round, they would face off against 10 seed Miami. Kansas would beat 10 seed Miami by 26 after Miami had made it to the Elite 8 by beating Iowa State in the Sweet 16. But Kansas would win this game by 26 after outscoring Miami by 32 in the second half to overcome their 6-point halftime deficit. Kansas would be led in scoring in this Elite 8 matchup by their starting guard and the reigning Big 12 Player of the Year, Ochai Agbaji, their senior out of Kansas City. He finished with 18 points, and he also had 5 rebounds and 4 steals in those 34 minutes. He shot 8 for 22 from the field and made both of his 3-pointers. With this win, that is how Kansas would make it into this matchup, where they would face off against their opponent, the 2-seed Villanova Wildcats. The Villanova Wildcats would they would make it to the Final Four after winning the South region of the bracket. They would finish their season winning the Big East Championship over Creighton by 6. They would enter this tournament and they would face off against 15-seed Delaware in Pittsburgh for their first matchup. They would go on to beat Delaware by 20 after they outscored Delaware by 10 in both halves. On the winning end of this matchup, Villanova was led in scoring by their starting guard, Justin Moore. Their junior out of Fort Washington, Maryland, will go on to finish with 21 points and 6 rebounds. As he would go on to play 33 minutes, he shot 7 for 13 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3 as he made all 4 of his free throws. Following this first matchup, Villanova would, of course, advance to the second round. In the second round, they would go on to beat 7-seed Ohio State. Ohio State made it to this round after they beat 10-seed Loyola Chicago in the first round. And to make it out of Pittsburgh, Villanova would beat Ohio State by 10 after outscoring Ohio State by 11 in the first half. In this matchup, Villanova would be led in scoring by their starting guard, the Big East Player of the Year, back-to-back actually, Colin Gillespie. Gillespie finished with 20 points and about 4 assists in 38 minutes. He shot 5 for 14 from the field, and he made all 8 of his free throws. And following this matchup, Villanova would make it into their second weekend. Their next 2 matchups would take place in New Orleans. Their Sweet 16 matchup would be against the 11-seed Michigan Wolverines after Michigan beat 3-seed Tennessee. Villanova would beat the Wolverines by 8 as they outscored the Wolverines by 5 in the second half. In this game, Villanova would be led in scoring by their starting forward, Jermaine Samuels, as their senior out of Franklin, Massachusetts, would go on to finish with 23 points. He had 22 points and 7 rebounds, as well as 2 assists and 2 blocks in 35 minutes. He shot 8 for 13 from the field as he made all 5 of his free throws. Following the Sweet 16 matchup, Villanova would, of course, stay in New Orleans they would stay in San Antonio, of course, until they got their win out of the region. They would go on to beat 5-seed Houston, and in this matchup, Villanova would beat Houston 50-44. They won this game by 6 after outscoring the Cougars by 7 in the first half. In this Elite 8 matchup, the Villanova Wildcats would be led in scoring by their starting forward, Jermaine Samuels. Their senior out of Franklin, Massachusetts, would go on to finish with 16 points and 10 rebounds in 33 minutes. After this, they would beat Houston after Houston beat Arizona, the 1 seed from that bracket originally. So that's where the 1 seed in that bracket came. But Villanova, with this win over the 5 seed, would advance to the Final Four. So now they are slated to face off against Kansas. That first matchup is going to be on TBS tonight in New Orleans, Louisiana. So and the winner of that will be the first team to advance to the national championship. And then the game after that is going to be the game that everyone was waiting for. At 8:49, the 2-seed Duke Blue Devils are going to face off against the 8-seed North Carolina Tar Heels. As entering this matchup, Duke and UNC have never played against one another in the March Madness tournament. This is going to be the first time that Hubert Davis has made the Final Four as UNC's head coach. I believe this is his first time making the tournament with UNC, if I'm not mistaken, in his first season. And I believe and I know for a fact that this is Coach Krzyzewski's last season with Duke, and this is the last time that he's made the Final Four. And it's quite a feat to even make the Final Four in your last season when 64 teams have already been eliminated before this. But first, taking a look at how the 8-seed North Carolina Tar Heels would make it into this round. They would go on to win the East Division. They would go on to win their very first 2 games in Fort Worth, Texas. Their first win would come, or I guess after their ACC tournament would end with them losing to the eventual ACC tournament champs, Virginia Tech. They would go on to win their first tournament game against 9-seed Marquette. They would beat Marquette by 32 points. They won it 95-63. They outscored Marquette by 28 in the first half, essentially. And then on the winning end of this matchup, the 8th seed Tar Heels were led in scoring by their starting forward, Brady Manick, out of Hurrah, Oklahoma. The transfer from the University of Oklahoma would finish with 28 points, 11 rebounds, and 2 blocks in 33 minutes. He shot 10 for 15 from the field, 5 for 10 from 3, and made all 3 of his free throws. North Carolina starting guard Caleb Love out of St. Louis, their sophomore, would go on to finish with 23 points for himself as he played 34 minutes. He shot 6 for 15 from the field. All of his makes came from 3. Carolina starting forward out of Virginia, Armando Bacot, finished with 17 points and 10 rebounds in 28 minutes. He shot 6 for 13 from the field and made all 5 of his free throws to help North Carolina make it to the second round, which would be the defining game of their bracket. They would go on to beat the 1 seed, and they were going to beat the 1 seed Baylor Bears, who were the defending champs coming into this matchup. North Carolina would win this matchup in overtime, 93-86. After they outscored Baylor by 13 in the first half, they would have to outscore Baylor 13-6 in overtime in order to come away with this win. On the winning end, they were led in scoring by their starting guard, R.J. Davis. Their sophomore out of White Plains, New York, would drop 30 points alongside 5 points and 6 rebounds in 45 minutes. R.J. Davis shot 8 for 17 from the field, 5 for 10 from 3, and 9 for 10 from the free throw line. And their starting forward out of Oklahoma, Brady Manick, finished with 26 points and 5 rebounds before he got ejected for elbowing a player. He shot 8 for 13 from the field, 4 for 8 from 3, and 6 for 8 from the free throw line. And then North Carolina starting forward, Armando Bacot, finished with 15 points, 16 rebounds, and 3 blocks in 39 minutes, shooting 4 for 10 from the field. After they would make it out of their first weekend in Fort Worth, they would play their next 2 games in Philly. Once North Carolina would make it to the Sweet 16, they would face off against the 4-seed UCLA Bruins. They would go on to beat the 4-seed Bruins by 7. They won it 73-66 after they outscored UCLA by 10 in the second half to overcome their 3-point deficit. North Carolina was led in scoring by their starting guard out of St. Louis, Caleb Love. Caleb Love would go on to finish with 30 points alongside 3 rebounds and 4 assists in 40 minutes. He shot 11 for 24 from the field, 6 for 13 from 3, and he made both of his free throws. North Carolina starting forward Armando Bacot would finish with 14 points and 15 rebounds in the 31 minutes he played, as he shot 6 for 10 from the field and made 2 of his 4 free throws on the night. That would be how North Carolina would make it into this matchup. Now taking a look at how they would make it into how they fared in the Elite Eight. They would face off against 15 seed St. Peter's after St. Peter's would beat 2-seed Kentucky, 7-seed Murray State, and 3-seed Purdue to make it all the way to the Elite Eight. North Carolina would end up beating St. Peter's by 20 after outscoring St. Peter's by 19 in the first half. In this matchup, the Tar Heels were led in scoring by their starting forward out of Virginia, Armando Bacot. He finished with 20 points and 22 rebounds alongside 2 blocks in 35 minutes. He shot 8 for 15 on the night. So that would be how North Carolina would make it into this Final Four matchup to face off against their all-time rival. Now looking at how the 2nd seed Duke Blue Devils would make it all the way to this round. After finishing their ACC tournament with a loss to Virginia Tech, just like North Carolina did, Duke would end up winning their first game of the tournament against 15 seed Cal State Fullerton. In this matchup, they would go on to outscore Cal State Fullerton by 10 in the first half and then 7 in the second. In this first matchup, Duke would be led in scoring by their starting forward, their freshman out of Washington, Paolo Banchero. He finished with 17 points, 10 rebounds, and 2 blocks. After this first win in Greenville, they would go on to play their second matchup against the 7-seed Michigan State Spartans. Against Tom Izzo, Coach K would lead the Blue Devils to a 9-point win as they outscored Michigan State by 5 in the second half. In the second game, Duke would be led in scoring by their starting forward, Paolo Banchero. Banchero finished with 19 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 turnovers. After these first 2 games, Duke would go on to play their next 2 games in San Francisco. In the Sweet 16, they would face off against the highest seed they would play in the West region, the 3-seed Texas Tech Raiders. They would beat Texas Tech 78-73. They won it by 5 after outscoring the Red Raiders by 9 in the second half. The Blue Devils would be led in scoring by their starting forward, Banchero, as Banchero finished with 22 points and 3 steals in the 37 minutes he played. He shot 7 for 12 from the field, 3 for 4 from 3, as he shot 5 for 6 from the free throw line as well. And then following this Sweet 16 matchup, Duke would then go into the Elite Eight, where they just came off of their most recent win against the 4-seed Arkansas Razorbacks. Duke would go on to beat Arkansas by 9, as they would outscore Arkansas by 12 in the first half. In this most recent matchup, Duke would be led in scoring by their starting forward, A.J. Griffin. Their freshman out of White Plains, New York, would go on to finish with 18 points in 26 minutes. He shot 7 for 9 from the field, 2 for 3 from 3, and he made both of his free throws. Duke's starting center, Mark Williams, their sophomore out of Virginia Beach, would go on to finish with 12 points and 12 rebounds in this game, as well as he also had 3 blocks in 35 minutes. He shot a perfect 6 for 6 from the field. So now the second seed Duke Blue Devils out of the ACC will face off against the UNC Tar Heels. Looking at the last time these two teams faced off, UNC actually beat Duke in Duke's home stadium, but Duke went on to beat North Carolina by 20 at North Carolina earlier in the season. So of course these teams are fairly even. So many people are definitely impatient. They definitely can't wait to see what happens here. Even in the regular season, Duke only finished with 1 more win than UNC in the ACC schedule. So once both of these games are done, the 2 winners will face off in this championship game, as there are 3 games left in the college basketball schedule. Once we get to Monday, I will preview the college basketball the championship game as I review all of the games that led to those 2 teams getting there. But of course, I do want to say congratulations to all 4 of these teams. This is a very historic Final Four, just alongside the women's Final Four. And of course, once these are done, of course, I'm going to come back with more. I want to thank the ESPN and NCAA websites for giving me all the facts and figures that I needed for this piece. And as we navigate with both tournaments, at the end of today, the national championship will be set, and tomorrow the women's national championship is set to be played, as South Carolina will face off against UConn, and then the men's championship will be played on Monday after that. So in this last weekend from March Madness, I do want to thank everyone for listening. I do hope all is well, and I will catch you with more with another segment once we get to Monday. And I want to thank everyone for listening. Once everything is done today, I will come back tomorrow on Sunday, April 3rd for another episode. So thanks once again for listening. I hope all is well. This is The Elite, and my name is James Sims. Thanks for listening to my piece, and peace out.